Good morning, everybody. My name's Neil Mohan. I'm responsible for our display advertising products at Google. And it's great to see so many familiar faces in the audience. This is our annual customer gathering. Happens to be one of my favorite events of the year. In addition to the several hundred folks that are in beautiful Dana Point, California with us today, for the first time in a long time, we actually are inviting folks from across the globe to join us as well. So we've got a few thousand people that are watching the live YouTube stream of this event, and so we're incredibly excited about that. Great. So to take us through how we're going to get there throughout the rest of the morning, let me introduce a man who needs no introduction, Terry Kawaja, who is the CEO of Luma Partners, and he's a man who travels with his own introductory video, which we should roll right now.
Well, this will be terrific. Okay. Thanks, man. Bye. Jonathan!
Yeah, I've got those changes to the Loomscape.
This is not about the Loomscape. So that was Neil Mohan of Google. He just asked me to MC the Doubleclick Insights event in California next month.
Excellent.
Yeah, could be a lot of potential interesting clients, but I'm thinking going Ricky Gervais.
The Ricky Gervais who absolutely roasted Hollywood during the Golden Globes.
That's the guy. He was funny as hell. The ratings were huge, and they asked him back 3 times.
And that was NBC. This is a Google conference. It's clients and relationships.
I could do his accent and everything.
Parents, you can't be serious.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ricky Gervais.
Ladies, hello and welcome to the annual Doubleclick Insights event live from the St. Regis Resort in Dana Point, California. How you doing, mate? I'm Terry Kawaja, founder and CEO of Luma Partners. I am not Ricky Gervais, sorry. That's Ricky Gervais. He's got a distinctive look, he's got a distinctive sort of personality. I am absolutely nothing like him at all. I see a lot of nervous faces in the room today, and I'll be perfectly honest, I'm a bit nervous myself, but at least I've got a strategy to deal with it. Cheers. What? It's apple juice. It's apple juice. You can test it later. Put a little Google Analytics on it. So last month, I held a conference, as Neil pointed out, called the Digital Media Summit, and we had CEOs where we offered our sponsors something that we called unsolicited brand advice. It was sort of topping the list, of course, was Google, where we suggested that, look, here's a company with a dominant position in search, a large and growing business in display, but when it comes to social media, you know, a bit challenged, okay? Google Plus, very interesting product, but a bit lagging relative to other social media networks. So we suggested perhaps I could go with a logo of change. What do you think? All right. So I wrote that joke on May the 16th, and all things considered, perhaps they should stick with what they've got. Right. But we polled our audience, and, you know, they liked it. Whatever. So, Facebook's not the only company that's been in the news. Yahoo also in the news. And while the whole Scott Thompson PR disaster has elevated the scrutiny on biographical representations, so in that vein, we checked Neil Mohan's LinkedIn profile. That's right. Where Neil purports to have an engineering degree from Stanford. We had our people look into it, and fortunately, it checked out. It checked out. Which is good news, because we didn't want to have to cancel. Though I must say, I had absolutely no idea he was 6'1". Seems a bit short in person. Right. So we've got everyone in the room who's important in the Google ecosystem. Again, to those watching online, we've got everyone important to the Google ecosystem here. We actually have a live web stream right now with thousands of viewers as we speak, watching the live YouTube feed, which, given the time of day, puts it slightly ahead of NBC in the ratings. As I've said, we've got everyone here. We've got publishers off to my right. We've got marketers over here to the left, and we've got Google appropriately in the middle and to the right. And I've noticed the Department of Justice in the back. Like I said, everyone important to the Google ecosystem. See, they recognize me because I'm the guy who built the slide that became Exhibit A in the antitrust defense. Can't you just see the lawyers? Look at all that competition. That's right. You're welcome, by the way, Neil. Specifically, I'd like to acknowledge a few people in the room. We've got, let's see, we've got Steve Cattleman from Omnicom is here. What can be said about Steve Cattleman that hasn't already been said by Steve Cattleman? Mark Ackley from Google is in the room. Obviously, he's not. He's actually on the golf course trying to get in 36 holes today. You know what they say, play to your strengths. We've got Michael Barrett is here, Luma client from AdMeld. Now here's a real industry leader whose career has had an amazing trajectory. He went from advertising salesperson to a successful CEO, and now he's an advertising salesperson. Actually, Michael's celebrating the big 500 today. No, I'm not talking about some lofty sales goal, but rather the number of days left on his vesting schedule. What? I've read the contract. We got Jonathan Bellick, who heads up DFPs, in the room. Jonathan's got a very exciting announcement about a fully completed rollout of XFP, the next generation of publisher workflow and monetization solutions. Oh, sorry, that announcement is for Doubleclick Insights in 2016. I said Ricky Gervais. What? You all get it? Oh, Enrique de Castro is in the room, ladies and gentlemen. What can I say about this Latin playboy? Handsome chap, isn't he? Give him 20 years, though, and a beard, and I'd suggest he'd be the most interesting Googler in the world. Stay searching, my friends. Turns out we've got major publishers here as well. ESPN is in the room, hot off a very successful video upfront the other week. Can you imagine how that went? All of these network and cable executives trying to pitch their shows for the fall, hoping that they get a decent rating. Imagine how that goes for ESPN. Right, let's see. This fall we've got baseball, football, basketball, and hockey, all rated #1. Any questions? It's not difficult, is it? Good for them. We've got Jeremy Steinberg of Fox News is here. Fox News, right, sort of reminds me of Google's purported approach to neutral media monetization. Fair and balanced. They say it was all right. I worked with my lawyers on the wording of that joke. David Kenny is here. Now, well, many of you know David as a Luma Partners Advisory Board member. It turns out he also has some day jobs, heading up an Atlanta-based publisher and a Sunnyvale-based portal on the board. So he knows a thing about digital agencies and technologies as well. And penultimately, that's second to last for you Southern Californians, we have Susan Wojcicki in the room. She's the one cringing up here on my left. My advice, Susan, own it. What worked for the Hollywood Foreign Press can work for you. And finally, we've got the host for today's event, my friend, at least my one-time friend, Neil Mohan. Now, Neil has been described as knowledgeable, insightful, and detail-oriented. Dynamic speak is not usually what comes up, usually stays on script. That said, we recently invited Neil to keynote at our Digital Media Summit. By the way, how many of you were in attendance at DMS? Not many, that's right. Sorry, it's exclusive. CEOs only. So if you're interested in going next year, my advice, get promoted. Anyways, back to Neil. So we held a fireside chat following his keynote, and he really came out of his shell. I could describe it, but let's just look at a clip, shall we? What advice would you give, if you're a CEO sitting in the ecosystem or an investor in a company, and they're trying to get Google's attention, whether it's business development or corporate development, the partnering, as you mentioned, what advice would you give them, and how do they get Google's attention, and how should they go about attempting to partner?
And this will actually hopefully sound familiar to many folks in this room, because it's what I say when I have one-on-one conversations with a lot of the folks in the room, is the best advice I can give you is, one of the most exciting things about this space that certainly gets me up in the morning is that it's an extremely dynamic space. A lot of what you and I just talked about 10 minutes ago were things that would have been fetched 12 months ago. And 12 months from now, there's going to be a whole new set of things that are going to be driving the industry. And so that's what keeps it extremely exciting. We have hundreds and hundreds of engineers focused on this particular space around the globe. We're investing in it ourselves extremely heavily, but we know that there's not, we can't build every single capability ourselves.
You said discuss, going viral on YouTube, and let me tell you, if something's going to go viral on YouTube, it's going to be that one. I'm just trying to increase, page views. So, and now, ladies and gentlemen, a bit of a serious note here. Now about sponsorship. I wrote some incredible jokes for today, some really, really good stuff about companies that may or may not have had challenging issues recently, such as embarrassing CEO replacements and, let's just say, less than ideal IPO performance. Well, I didn't say the names. But Google, they did the right thing, and their lawyers asked me to edit that out of my material. Apparently, controversy is great for network ratings, but not so good for public relations. What a dilemma that put me in. The comedian in me said, no way, I compromise my artistic integrity. But the investment banker in me screamed, sell out and get something in return. So, after consulting my agent, I did the right thing. How do I know I made the correct decision? That's easy. When it comes to Google, my agent, he's always right. Because my agent is Ari Emanuel. Shall we get on with it? Right. Let's hear it for the comedy genius of Ricky Gervais. They say you should never follow a comedian, and there's a good reason why. I figured so long as it's still the same person, maybe I can change that rule. Hey, I am Terry Kawaja, founder and CEO of Lumen Partners. Delighted to be here and participating in the Doubleclick Insights event. As many of you know, I am both investment banker by day and comedian by night and day sometimes. And it's done with a purpose. I find that humor is a fantastic tool. If I'm speaking at a conference, I have two challenges. I have to capture people's attention and then their retention. And in an age of digital, where everyone's doing email at conferences, use a little bit of humor. You certainly grab their attention. And how many presentations do you remember over the last 3 years? It does a fantastic job of having people remember it as well. So I hope you all, and I appreciate Google for putting up with the butt of some of those jokes. But truly, I find it to be a very sort of liberating tool to forward business. So the theme of the Doubleclick Insights is appropriately focused on the consumer. So regardless of the issue we're discussing, whether it relates to marketers or agencies or publishers or vendors in the middle, the end goal should always be about the consumer. And that gets lost sometimes. We, especially when you see a map like this, which tends to focus a lot on the folks in the middle. And there are a lot of them. And too often, the conversation gets centered around the vendors and not on the principles of the transactions and, most importantly, the consumer. So I'm delighted that the theme of today and what you'll hear throughout the day in all of our panels from folks very experienced on the buy side, on the sell side, and some vendors in the middle with a little bit of Google splashed in there, is a real focus on the consumer experience and how do we take this industry from a sizable and growing and positive one to something substantially bigger. You'll note that in the display Lumascape that the consumer is in the equation along with the principles. In fact, the consumer is the one constant in each of the Lumascapes, and there are now 9 Lumascapes covering all the various aspects of the digital media ecosystem, from display to search to video to mobile to commerce to social, and just released yesterday, in fact, the new Lumascape, the gaming Lumascape, much anticipated. You know, a lot of consumer time is spent doing gaming in all aspects, whether they be, you know, social, mobile, and casual, or the traditional forms on consoles and in MMO sessions. But this has truly become a very large, growing, and important channel for digital media. So our sessions are, like I said, going to cover, get away from the usual sort of vendor-to-vendor discussion and focus on the principles. And, you know, in keeping with sort of Neil's predictions that he gave at our DMS Summit, I thought it would be fun to sort of set the stage and revisit some of the things that we talked about 2 years ago. I gave an IAB presentation and talked about 7 different things that we saw coming in the space, and maybe we thought we'd review those. So the first thing we said, before we get into the predictions, is this whole notion of focusing on the principles. Again, too much vendor discussion, everyone, you know, pitching their own wares, and we wanted to make sure that the most important people, including the consumer, are in fact the subject of our talks. So the first you know, sort of observation / prediction was that we had an overcrowded marketplace. Now, bear in mind that 2 years ago, we had less categories. We had half as many companies on the Lumascape. And interestingly, I made the point that $2.5 billion, you know, funded by VCs into this fragmented universe was potentially going to end badly. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are now over $5 billion invested throughout the various digital landscapes. So that issue only gotten bigger in the last 2 years. So we give ourselves a +1 for that one. See? Google Plus. There we go. Right. The second prediction, demand-side capabilities likely to amalgamate. I swear to God, we didn't coordinate this with Neil's announcement this morning, but it was clear to us that you could not have, for the marketer or their agency partners, you know, a completely fragmented universe with too many point solutions. You really, really needed to focus them, amalgamate them, bring them together so that you were really providing solutions instead of sort of one-off point solutions. So we'll go Google Plus on that too. Third, Google is coming into display in a big way. Okay, fine. I had a little bit of inside knowledge. I was working on the Invite Media transaction whilst making this prediction. Usually a good thing, makes you look smart. But the reality is, obviously, we've now seen since then Google obviously moving in. It just logically, goodbye, Ricky, logically makes sense. So that one definitely. 4, data becomes ubiquitous and commoditized. Now here, I really was focusing on the fact that, you know, third-party data and scraping data and sort of ubiquitously available cookie data would perhaps lose its value in the ecosystem because of the duplicity, and there would be a lot more importance placed on first-party data. I think we've seen exactly that. So we'll give the plus there. Number 5, life gets tougher for agencies. The premise here was that these poor agencies that are trying, you know, they had a simple world before based on art, Some say the 3-martini lunch and the golf game, but let's just call it art and be polite. And now we have this world of science, and it's just not necessarily a natural fit for these professional services organizations to cope with all of that change. Heck, it's not easy for anyone. And so for agencies either trying to be the systems integrator for all of this technology or in fact a provider of technology themselves, my prediction was that they would have some challenging times. Now, they've adapted. They've got trading desks. They have ways to intermediate and stay relevant in this more scientific world. And I'd say the jury's out. I think I gave myself a plus, but really that should be a neutral. We'll see how that goes. And listen, we're all rooting for them. Number 6, that publishers would need to leverage data for their own benefit. So the early days of audience-based media buying were really sort of a party that only the demand side showed up for, right? The whole implementation and advent of technology into media sales had the net effect of lowering CPMs. Great for marketers, publishers, not so much. That's changing. The sophistication level at publishers is going up, and the applications of technologies applied towards the sort of optimization of inventory, in particular working solutions that are more upper funnel. The whole focus of today is to, yes, we're doing great at the bottom of the funnel at RTB and all of that. That's fantastic, but let's focus on solutions that will really drive us from a $50 billion to that $200 billion number that we've heard about so much. And I think that's now happening with publishers. And the final prediction was that consolidation was coming from several buyer groups. We have seen this in spades. Agencies, offline marketing companies, media companies, software firms, data companies. We're seeing a tremendous growing, expanding universe of buyers who look at all this innovation that's taking place across the digital media ecosystems and basically concluding they need to be a part of that, and buying is faster and better technology than necessarily building. And so we've seen a vast variety of interest. I think this past week when we saw the Oracle Vitru and Salesforce Buddy Media transactions, just sort of case in point of how that is taking place. So Google Plus on that one. So those are the issues we were talking about 2 years ago. Those are the very issues that have either partially transpired or are materially and important in today's realm as well. I think, as Neil pointed out, the added issues that we're going to talk about, much more about upper funnel. We're going to get into the whole TV conversation, about rich media, about an engaging consumer experience. Again, if you think only of conversion, if you think only of ad optimization from a sort of bottom of the funnel standpoint, you can put your head in too much of a vendor or B2B framework. I think when you open that lens and think about the consumer, really that's where we start to get into the fun stuff and the interesting stuff.
I don't really like the ads in the internet.
If I see something on there, I pretty much bypass it.
I really don't pay attention to online ads at all.
I personally think that that these ads that are tailor-fitted towards me is a good thing.
I would say the internet is more creative than TV with advertising, perhaps because you can take greater risks.
If someone is interested in these things, he will click it. You don't have to say, hey, click me, click me, click me.
Like I said, I really like web advertising that's relevant to the content on the page, is also relevant to the user, and if it can be built into the content, I think that's awesome.
It's not so much about quantity as it is about quality.
Good advertising shouldn't feel like advertising.
I haven't seen anything earth-shattering where I would say, wow, that was a great banner ad.
Well, I'm not on the internet, so I could care less.
It's dangerous. It's dangerous, specifically with the website. My boyfriend and I love to shop at that site, and it pops up almost every single time we're on a new web page, and it's dangerous because it makes me want to go to the web page and buy a whole bunch of crap. But it's great.
So dangerous meaning it's effective.
Absolutely, absolutely effective.
I definitely go to customer conferences a lot. Usually my boss asks me to, but I think they do definitely help out.
It's good if you don't waste a lot of time and you actually learn something and get some free sandwiches.
Yeah, free samples.
Well, I don't go to conferences, so I could care less.
Customer conferences are a great way to meet with other people, with other customers, and enjoy customer products.
Customer conferences? I don't think I've ever been to one.
Well, I usually choose my customer conferences due to location, California, Florida, you know, somewhere I could get a good suntan, shopping, men in suits.
Not on my watch. 158 years of buried my mom 40 years ago. Homesick, 200 miles away. No.
If you could sum up, what is it? If you could sum up in one word why humans won't reach their full potential, that word would be meetings and conferences.